Welcome to the Fast Mode podcast series. I'm Tara Nil, and with me today is Ian Cottingham, Director of Mobile Network Operators and Digital Infrastructure at BT Wholesale. BT Wholesale is a division of BT Group, providing wholesale telecommunication services to UK-based communication providers, including broadband, voice, mobile, and data solutions. It supports businesses with robust, scalable networks, enabling them to deliver high-quality services to their customers. Known for its extensive infrastructure and innovation, BT Wholesale plays a pivotal role in powering the UK's digital connectivity. At BT, Ian is in charge of delivering scalable, resilient connectivity and data infrastructure solutions for mobile network operators, data centers, and enterprises across the UK. Welcome, Ian. Great to have you on today's episode.
Thank you, Tara. Great to be here.
Okay, so let's begin with 2025, having just begun. I mean, it's been 2 weeks or 3 weeks already. What are some of the trends that you foresee will drive demand for co-location services this year? Are technologies like AI and edge computing playing a significant role?
Yes, Tara, they are. So the first one, which maybe will be the most obvious, is the trend for AI adoption, and we see AI as being a particularly data-hungry application, which is finding a home in large data centers as well as different co-location centers. I think it's a good example of how data is used in the way across the colo centres, particularly the way we think about it in terms of training the AI models in the large data centres, as well as how you then make those models and that data available to end users through inference, which we are finding is best processed and stored at the edge of the network closest to the user. So certainly one of the big trends that we see is driving demand, co-location and edge, irrespective of how far from the core centers you define edge is one of the core trends. The second one is, I think it's away from AI, but it is other uses which is putting demands on edge, and particularly services which need low latency in the data performance into the data center. And we're certainly seeing emerging use cases such as camera as a service, where you have the analytics required at the edge of the network. Other further out ones we see is, of course, autonomous vehicles, which we're starting to see the beginnings of. And if you take autonomous vehicles as a case, we are seeing cars producing between 100 and 300 gigs per second of data, the majority of which will be disposed because it's not useful, but a proportion of which is highly valuable data. And co-location and storage close to the edge of the network, of course, is the best place to process and use and then commercialize that data. And probably the third trend, which we see, and certainly as BT, we work across a range of critical national infrastructure and government contracts, is the sovereignty angle. And what co-location services give is a known UK location for data. So for any application where you do not want data being transferred out of the jurisdiction, out of the country, then co-location can give that sovereignty to your data and the data processing.
Okay, so those are the three trends and definitely interesting ones. And let's see how they unfold for the rest of the year. Okay, so while we are at that, you mentioned these, the factors driving demand for co-location services, right? So do you foresee the demand coming from the enterprise side or from the CSPs? And, how do the needs and priorities between these two groups differ?
So we're seeing demand from both, of course, and I think the balance for the work that we're doing in BT Wholesale is how we bring the capacity to the market in the most efficient way. So in some cases that will be direct into enterprises who want to use co-location services for some of the reasons we spoke about slightly earlier. But I think it's the bespoke nature of what we can build for operators, and as you mentioned, the CSPs, which is particularly interesting. The way that we look to partner with organisations to create and develop colo space is less focused towards selling individual racks in pre-built co-location facilities, and more partnering with organisations to build and design bespoke data centres at the edge of the network in a suitable facility for the requirement of that CSP or that operator. I think one of the best examples we have is the partnership we have with Boulder Networks, who are running the project to provide the TfL with mobile signal on the underground, and we designed and built in collaboration with Bolden data center facilities on the edge of the TfL network, which will run that telephony equipment to then run the service on the underground. And I think the expertise we bring around design, delivery, and build is what works well, particularly in the operator arena.
So does that mean that there's different teams or different expertise groups that would address these two different segments, or is it usually the same teams that will serve both?
No, it's a great question. I think when you look at the higher volume end of the colo market, it's a much simpler design and delivery journey. When we are looking to co-invest in co-build carrier grade facilities, it's a very different level of expertise to work not just on the capital models, but also on designing the facility ground up to suit the particular use case for which we are designing it. So there will be some areas of standardization, such as the PUE, the efficiencies and the power availability that we build into the facility, but it's the design and delivery process in working with the partner to ensure that we're building a facility of the right performance, the right size to suit the requirements. So certainly the focus is, I would say, greater on the operator because of that skill set in designing the bespoke services.
And what do you think is like the biggest factor that determines, who enterprises or CSPs work with when they are choosing their co-location partners or service providers?
It's interesting, and I think the debate around what constitutes the edge for the UK markets is one of the key ones there. You can deal with a global SaaS provider who will define the edge as one country within a continent, or you can deal with a car manufacturer who's looking to build an edge data center within a city. And the requirements for co-location now are so broad, it's actually quite hard to typify why one facility is successful over the other. And the most important thing is just understanding the use case and the life cycle of that data. Therefore, what's the sort of performance parameters, what's the sort of sovereignty and security parameters, and therefore what sort of facility is required. At the enterprise level, I would say there's less differentiation in the overall market, but once you start working towards the operator and the bespoke build end of data center, then it becomes quite different in terms of efficiencies, things being designed for purpose, and making sure that the overall capital efficiency in the project is suitable because it's been designed to fit.
Oh, excellent. So now, I guess let's talk about BT Wholesale. How are you guys working to expand the availability and capacity of co-location services across the UK?
So we've an interesting journey, and it's really one of a question of real estate and power. Actually, real estate and power availability in the UK. The story of BT from a real estate perspective is a fascinating one, and it goes back a very long time into switchboards in the old copper PSTN telephony, and to run that infrastructure. We had over 5,500 buildings, and they are in the middle of city centres and used to be full of telephony switching equipment. When we fast forward even today and then look forward to 2030, 2040, even 2050, the evolution of the network which BT run for our fixed and our mobile customers has changed substantially. And what that means is that 5,500 locations will come down to around about 1,000 buildings, which we then need to run the next generation fibre networks. So within those 1,000 locations, they are very different from the 5,500 that we would have had running up to now on the copper network, because they are in their own right state of the art data centers to run the BT network, both fixed and mobile. And what that gives us in BT Wholesale and in partnership with our colleagues in BT Networks is quite a unique footprint of facilities which are empty in the whole, other than the floors which we've developed to run our own networks, and the ability, therefore, to build custom data center where we have power availability. So typically 2 to 5 megawatts of spare power capacity in those locations. They're right in the middle of city centres and town centres, so it's a fantastic definition of edge, which I think we've mentioned a couple of times, and also quite unique infrastructure such as backup generators in sound attenuated rooms. So the sorts of facilities that to build from scratch or to build from a brownfield site is extremely difficult. So this consolidation of real estate within BT and what that gives us from a power and a space perspective is what gives us this platform to start looking at how do we address the carrier or co-location market in the UK.
And how do you guys monitor such an expensive and extensive facilities that are under your portfolio?
So there's probably a couple of aspects to that. So in the locations where BT Networks have built our core nodes and our edge nodes, both for the fiber networks and for our mobile networks, then that's BT's core business. BT will, we have the national NOCs and the security coverage to run those as our own facilities. When we develop these as colo services for our customers, it's probably another good example of our flexibility in terms of designing and delivering a service in partnership with particularly a carrier organization in terms of what we do, what security credentials we bring, what physical security we bring, versus those of which the partner will want to bring. And as we've gone on this journey over the last 3, 4, 5 years, I don't think there's one typical model. So when we look at things like security, we can bring the highest security credentials in the market to bear because that is how BT Networks run our own networks, and we have capacity and space in all of those facilities. How we then expand those facilities for our partners is entirely down to that design and delivery process to ensure that we're building something which fits the partner.
Okay. So, building on that, what makes BT Wholesale uniquely positioned to deliver co-location services? I mean, compared to the other players in the market.
Yeah, so I think the topic of access and availability is really important, and that is the sheer coverage of these sites in the UK. And one of the most important parts of that is how they are peered into the network. So well, actually, the first P is power, and I think that is unique because getting DNO or the distributed network of power into new facilities is an extremely difficult process in the data center world. So having the power in those locations and having that power available is a huge thing. But then I start to talk about the networking and the peering. So being peered really strongly into all the fiber providers and close to BT's core network is a real strength, but also being peered really closely to our mobile cloud core, and this is the more distributed architecture that BT Networks use to run the EE network. So having co-location facilities that we can build which are almost directly paired with the EE mobile network is quite a unique technical offering. I think further to that, it is the design and delivery expertise that we bring as BT. We bring these skills to bear to build our own network, and that network, as I mentioned earlier, runs critical national infrastructure in government contracts in the UK. We also hold the contract for emergency services network for the mobile network. So those credentials we can bring to help partners design and deliver the best facilities. And then the exhaust and the outcome from that is the resilience and reliability that we would naturally look to build in to any facility that we co-develop with a partner.
So, yeah, amazing. So, our last question for today. Can you share insights into recent partnerships, such as the collaboration with AWS?
Yeah, listen, AWS is a really important partnership for us in BT Wholesale. We launched an edge data center with AWS in our Manchester location 18 months ago, and that is running the AWS Wavelength platform in collaboration with the BT infrastructure, which we've talked about in this conversation. And what this is to give is a platform for mobile edge computing. So from eSIMs using best network, a low latency path directly into the Amazon Wavelength infrastructure, which can then host any edge applications which need hyper low latency to the mobile device. We're seeing some really interesting use cases come out of this. We're certainly looking at the camera as a service market and what that means in terms of detecting abnormal patterns and having SIM-based cameras which can then peer directly into that. We're also looking at how private 5G networks can peer off of this infrastructure, and we've done some really interesting work with Belfast, both the museum and Belfast Harbour, where they can make use of hyper low latency services in that Manchester zone. So the AWS partnership is a real key example of how the infrastructure being built can then enable different use cases to develop business off of. And so we developed the first location in Manchester. Plans will be to then develop that out more nationally once the use cases mature and we can find the real applications to scale out. But it's a great example of a innovation in partnership in delivering something real in this topic of mobile edge compute and edge computing.
Any other partnerships in the pipeline?
We've partnerships across BT with certainly all the hyperscalers, and it's an ongoing topic of conversation about how we bring those to bear through our data center assets. But the list of partnership does go beyond the hyperscalers into a wide range of data center partners and builders, into telco operators who need edge infrastructure, and indeed the capital investment coming into Europe and into the UK for data center build is presenting opportunities all the time that some we haven't even thought of yet. So there's a wave of opportunity around data center build in doing it in the right way, in the most secure way, in partnership with BT. So it's an exciting area to keep developing.
All right. Okay. So I guess we have we've learned quite a bit today, and we have come to the end of the session. So thank you, Ian, for joining us today and sharing your insights on the co-location space and your predictions as well for the rest of the year.
Thank you, Tara. Been a pleasure.
Okay. And to everyone else tuning in, thank you for listening. If you guys want to learn more, visit www.btwholesale.com and follow us for more updates and insights as we continue to uncover the latest in technology and telecommunications. See you in our next session. Bye.